Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, 21st of March, and I'm going to knock a couple on the head tonight just to continue giving myself a bit of a head start, and I can give myself a rest tomorrow. So we're going to do a run of drams that I managed to source from the Newcastle Whisky Festival that I was at a week or so ago, hosted by the fabulous guys at the Whisky Lounge. And I'm going to do 4 that I acquired from the rather wonderful Rick Drysdale. Sure, that was his name, Rick Drysdale. He gave me a card and it's upstairs in the office and I can't bother to get it, but I'm pretty certain it was Rick Drysdale was the name, from a company called Douglas Laing. Now, Douglas Laing are an independent bottling company that was founded by a guy called Fred Douglas Laing in 1948 in Glasgow. And if you want some good information on him, I would go to the Douglas Laing website itself. The address is here, www.douglaslaing.com. There's a really good page on him as a person, written by one of his sons, Fred Hamilton Laing, no less. And Fred was the second son of Fred Douglas, who inherited the business from his father with his brother Stuart. And Stuart and Fred basically took the business as an independent bottler that really selected high quality stock, released in single casks, more often than not a cask strength, or if not at a higher alcohol percentage than you would normally do for, not just a 40%. They tend to look at 46, if not cask strength. They do some really interesting wood finishes, some limited ranges of bottlings, releases that you wouldn't normally get. They are responsible for one of my all-time favourite whiskies, which was a Kalila. I think it was a 1992. It was about a 14-year-old Kalila, and they'd matured it in red wine casks. And it came out when I was managing the whisky shop, and we sold cases of the stuff because we absolutely loved it. And it was a case of people would come in and say, what do you recommend? And we'd just hand them a sample of that and say, try that. It is absolutely brilliant. It was about 45, 50 quid a bottle, and it was just incredible stuff. And Douglas Laing have always been, to me, really, really good, really high quality. They care about their product, and I wouldn't hesitate in recommending any of their products. They were absolutely fantastic. Now, unfortunately, a few years ago in 2013, Stuart and Fred split the business. Now, it was amicable. As far as I'm aware, it was a commercial decision that they'd both made amicably. Fred has retained the Douglas Laing branding. He is now running the business with his daughter Cara, and here's a picture of the two of them now. Now, Fred, although he doesn't look like it nowadays, I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times when I was working at the whisky shop, and he reminded me very much. I always described him as a Scottish Burt Reynolds. Fantastic moustache. It just looked so much like Burt Reynolds it was untrue, and there's some older pictures of him where it's even more so. But full of character, full of life, so passionate about his whiskey. I never met Stuart, but I have heard that Stuart was maybe not quite as crazy as Fred was, but equally as passionate. Stuart, with his 2 sons, formed a company called Hunter Laing, and they're basically running a separate business. I believe it's focusing more on kind of overseas markets, more towards the Far East, but I've not yet come across any Hunter Laing bottlings, whereas Douglas Laing is still going strong. And Fred is just, personally, he's a legend. He's absolutely fantastic. And I've not met Cara, but I've spoken to her on the phone a couple of times. Myself and a friend of mine, Ollie Chilton, actually did a tasting as an application for working potentially for her when she was working at Mike Mackay. She is now co-running essentially Douglas Laing as a business with Fred, and they're doing a fantastic job as far as I'm aware. So as part of their ranges now, they have single malts, they have single grains, they have a couple of blends, of various kind of styles and releases, wood finishes, all sorts of stuff. They also have a range called the Remarkable Regional Malts, and these are blended malts, also known as vatted malts, and they actually prefer the term vatted malts, so they will still tend to use that. These are blended malts that they are releasing as essentially the best representation of the regions in Scotland. So they have a Speyside, they have a Highland, they have an Island, and then an Isla. Now the Isla I think is the first one, because that was called Big Pete, and that's the first one that I can remember, and I've got a feeling that that led on to the other three being released, because I can remember Big Pete coming out when I was working at the whisky shop and the other three weren't available. They're fantastically packaged. The first one that I'm going to have is called Timorous Beastie, which is from, it's a term from one of Robert Burns's poems, To a Mouse, and it was a description of the mouse itself. So I've got it in a sample bottle, so obviously it doesn't look like that on the shelf. On the shelf it looks like this. It's, as you know, it's a really distinctive packaging, and all four of the Remarkable Regional Malts are really, really nicely packaged. Very nice logos. They've done a cracking job on the design of it, certainly. So Rick was kind enough to give me some little pamphlets on them as well. So I've got one of each of all of these. So it saved me doing a bit of research. It's bottled at now this is bottled at 46.8%, so it's a higher alcohol percentage than a standard bottling, shall we say. They don't chill filter any of their whiskies whatsoever. There is an argument that chill filtration, where essentially you bring the whiskey down to a temperature close to freezing, and it crystallizes some of the sort of anomalies within the whiskey, which you can then filter out, and then you get it's technically a cleaner, purer spirit. There is an argument that chill filtration actually takes some of the flavour away and you lose some of the character. So Douglas Laing are quite adamant that they don't chill filter any of them, and they make a point of mentioning that as well. So they actually, in their blurb, they actually still call this a vatted malt. It's a non-chill filtered vatted malt, and it includes, amongst others, they say, Blair Athol, Glengarry, Dalmore and Glengoyne. Now Blair Athol I haven't yet had as part of the challenge, but the other three I have, and all three are, no, I've not had Dalmore yet, have I? No, I haven't had Dalmore. I have had Dalmore before and it's excellent, but Glengarry and Glengoyne were good, so they're picking some really good whiskies here. So I've not had any of these four at all, but I'm really excited to try them because, as I said, Douglas Laing, I really highly rate them. So this is quite pale. I'll show you actually the next one that I'm going to have as well, because this is the Timorous Beastie. And if I hold it over there, hopefully that'll give you a better impression. Now this is the next one I'm going to have, which is their Speyside Regional Malt. And hopefully you can see it's quite considerably darker. I do feel a bit awkward stood like this, but it's the best way that I can show it. So it's really quite a pale colour. Surprisingly so, given it's the Highland. But wow, on the nose, there's bags of character on that. Let's just see what it does, because they do have tasting notes, and it's always interesting to sort of see what the official tasting notes are. However, sometimes they can steer you in the wrong direction, or you can start looking for things that you might not necessarily pick up. So it might say certain things like honey or fudge or things like that, and you're looking for flavours and aromas. You're looking for something, maybe missing other things that you might pick up personally. So I will refer to them once I've done it myself, just to see. And plus, it's interesting to do it yourself and then see if any of those match, because it might be that you realise, oh, actually, you are picking things up. You know, you get these people that give you really wafty tasting notes and everything like that, and you're thinking you're making this thing up. But sometimes it's quite interesting to nose it yourself, try it yourself, try and pick out the flavours. And it's quite good if you're new to tasting to actually not look at tasting notes and then see if anything that you pick up yourself come up on the official tasting notes, because that can actually give you a bit more confidence, and you can start going, oh right, I am kind of understanding where it's coming from. Or if you think, oh, it smells like something but I can't think what, and it tastes like this but I just can't quite remember what it is. Sometimes our tasting notes will remind you what it was that you were trying to think of, and it's good practice. It kind of gets you into the swing of things and realising that you don't have to be an absolute expert to taste whiskey. You can be a normal human being and taste whiskey. Everybody's got different tastes. Everybody tastes different things. There is no right and wrong. Ultimately, it's whether you like it or not, and only you can tell yourself that. Nobody else can. So there's a really nice softness to it, and a sweetness that turns into a kind of apple. There's like an apple pie aroma to this. There is a lovely sugary sweetness as well to start with. There is a maltiness to it, and it's kind of a very delicate Horlicks vibe, but there's definite kind of apple pie and really soft cinnamon. Yep, definitely that kind of a short crust apple pie that's been just slightly browned in the oven and the sugar sprinkled on top, so the sugar's caramelised. It's very, very nice indeed. That's very, very good. There's a lovely richness to it. There's a lovely, again, it's kind of like it's like a sugar solution almost. There's a really nice sweetness to it. There's a lovely rich mouthfeel. And then right at the end, it becomes a little bit spicy, but it's not a pepperiness and it's not a hotness. And I think it's a combination of flavours and also that slightly higher alcohol percentage that's just giving you an alcoholic heat, but it's supporting the flavours that are there. To Chris Cook, it is that prickle that I keep talking about. There's your sweepstakes. If you got 11 minutes in to this tasting for me to say the word prickle, congratulations, you win a prize. But there is a lovely softness to it. Really, really gentle, with this nice backbone of, there is a little bit of oakiness in there, but it's not drying. There's this lovely, slightly floral fruitiness, kind of gooseberries and apple pie and a bit of fudginess, but not a huge amount. It's a fantastic whiskey. It's really, really good. Considering how pale it is, there's so much more flavour than that you would look at that whiskey and think, it's going to be quite delicate and there's probably not going to be a lot to it. And the colour of this whiskey, and they don't add colouring either. They're adamant they don't add colouring. So this is natural colouring. And it's one of those where if you were to pick it up, you would expect, your eyes would be telling you, this is going to be quite light, quite delicate, probably not a lot to it. And there's loads to this, but it's incredibly well balanced. It is delicate, but there's a lovely richness underlying absolutely everything. All the delicate floral flavours that are there, there's this beautiful kind of like richness of candy floss. Now candy floss can be quite delicate, but if you put a large chunk in your mouth and it melts in your mouth and it kind of coats all the senses, you know, coats all your mouth and you can kind of feel it sinking. It's that feel along with all these fruity characters as well. Very, very good whiskey indeed. That's superb stuff. In terms of a price, now there's a question because I didn't actually look, but I think it's about 30 quid. It's worth it if it's about that. If I'm wrong, I do apologise. And once I find the price properly, I'll put it on the show notes. But it's excellent. I would pick it up anyway. It's fantastic. And as a representation of a Highland, it's difficult to say because what is a Highland whiskey? As a whiskey, it's very, very good indeed. Get one of those if you can. It's superb stuff. I'm going to rinse out and we shall move on to the next one. Cheers.